So we're talking World War One. This week we are on. Well, we had a little confusion about that, right? Are we in October or is it November, December?
November, December.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hand it over to MC and Farty. Go ahead and lead us off here, and we'll see how this goes.
Okay, we're going to start with just obviously reading through the timeline, and we start with obviously a Krajevec. I cannot even attempt to try to pronounce the name. Is taken in northern Serbia, right? This is the final. This is beginning the final push of Serbia, right? This is the destruction of Serbia. After this, for all intents and purposes, Serbia is out of the war. Right? The start of the war began with Serbia, and it's going to end pretty much in December. All right, where the Serbian forces are basically pushed back. Now, if you remember from last month when we were talking about about October, Bulgaria has decided to join the war on the side of the Central Powers. Okay, this was a major advance to the Central Powers, and it was a major blow to the what we term the Allies or the Entente. And you're going to see the results of, in this battle. Okay. The Prime Minister then, Mr. Asquith, is that how you pronounce his name, by the way?
Yes, Asquith.
It reinforces. Now, you remember, Bulgaria has entered the war, so the Serbians are really now on the defensive. They're really getting pushed back. And so he is basically saying that after this war is over, Serbia is going to be an independent nation. All right? He's declaring that as part of it. Okay? There is, in the northern portion of the east, you have the Russians. They're making some slight advances against the Ottoman Turks. The third battle of Isano.
Just real quick, just a little trick to remember how to pronounce that the word, like that dude's name Asquith, is just think you're squashing a gay frog. Asquith.
Okay. Anyway. Isano, which is really the Battle of Caprietta. It's all part of the Caprietta campaign. This is the Italian efforts in the mountains, and they're not. It's just a slaughter fest. Okay, all it is it's a meat grinder. No one's making any kind of headway. You're fighting in mountains. All right, pass by pass, yard by yard. This is now November. It's getting cold. All right, it's snow. You can imagine what this was like. And, yeah, they bring up a lot of artillery on both sides. They shell one another. They kill one another. And then the Italians quit and go back. That's pretty much what ends up happening. All right. You're starting to see the British now realizing that the Dardanelles campaign is a disaster. so they're forming a meeting there. All right.
Wait a minute, though. I want to ask a question here. November 2nd. And yeah, that date stands out. That's my damn birthday. But the British Prime Minister declares the Serbian independence to be the essential object of the war. So if Germany went, okay, Serbia can be independent, we still want France, the British would have been like, all right, Kaiser, you got it.
Well, not necessarily, because it's actually the British Premier, and like a premier is sort of like a Prime Minister's deputy. It's not exactly like that, but basically, like, we've got a Premier for the state of New South Wales. He's basically the guy who runs the state of New South Wales. That's basically what a Premier does. He's like the Prime Minister for a state.
Oh, he's like a governor or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I misunderstood then. All right, got you.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I didn't catch that either. I was thinking he was the. I was thinking he was the Prime Minister too.
No, it's a premier, or a premier, as you guys call it.
Okay, in the African campaigns, you've got the Cameroon battles are coming to an end. Lord Kitchener leaves England for the Dardanelles. Now, Kitchener will make his bones. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the the expeditionary campaign when he goes down and takes over the British forces in Egypt. Is that correct?
Yeah, he doesn't win any favors doing that either.
But he does travel to the Dardanelles. I mean, he actually goes. You got to give the man credit. He visits the Dardanelles and actually goes on inland, right, to the front lines, right. So
what he doesn't do straight off the bat is realise how much of a futile exercise it is, and doesn't pull us straight off the beach straight away.
No, that's going to take another couple months, unfortunately.
Yeah, so in the meantime, he's sort of like still going, oh yeah, just send human waves over that hill there. It didn't work the first 50 times. They won't expect it on the 51st.
Well, what happens as winter starts to sink in, especially in the Eastern Front? You don't want to fight in Russia in winter. Ask Napoleon. It's not a smart idea.
Well,
no one does.
As what's happening here, what's happening in the Eastern Front is the Germans have put a general hold on it. Okay, and what they've done is they've realigned their forces to support the Austro-Hungarians in the southern part of those areas, because the Austro-Hungarians have been taking such a frickin' beating from the Russians. All right, so they're reinforcing the Austro-Hungarians in the southern part of that field. But you get the Russians. You got to remember now, the Russians aren't doing a whole lot either. Right, they're doing some counteroffensive here and there. Task infantry but overall,
like we said, MC, sorry to cut you off, but like we said last week, the Russians are still doing horse and buggy shit, aren't they?
Well, in a lot of ways, everyone still is to an extent. All right, but the thing is the heavy weapons are the problem. They don't have the same amount of heavy artillery that the Germans can bring in. They don't have the same number of machine guns, for example. Right, and they definitely don't have the discipline and the training. And
what guns were they using for artillery? Didn't the Western powers have the howitzer and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, everyone had the bigger guns. I mean, you can take a look at this point in time. If I'm not mistaken, they've already started to shell Paris with the Paris gun, which is a huge rail gun. For the Germans. You see if I can hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull up a picture.
Yeah, the Paris gun was a gigantic thing that had to actually have its own railway lines made for it. They basically cut the railway lines where they were going to shoot it, and then turn a section of the railway line sideways so they could traverse the gun. It takes about 24 hours for them to set the actual thing up once they've put it in a position. And the major reason why they never use these things in a large capacity was mainly aircraft. You really can't hide them. That's where, World War II, you didn't have as many like gigantic super weapons like what you do in World War One.
Now look at these guide wires that they have for this thing. And you can see there's people standing here. You can see how big this gun is. And this thing is launching a shell about 70 miles?
Something like that.
All right, all the way into Paris.
Real quick, Matt's talking about something very important in the chat. What type of beer is that?
What type of beer is what?
He said, well, I did it, boys. Found my new favorite beer. 25 fluid ounces of 8% alcohol at $1 a piece.
Well. What's the better taste like shit, but?
Well, yeah, because I'm paying $1.60 and I got 8.1%, but it's still reserved, man. I mean, that ain't everybody's cup of tea.
It's like I didn't mind Elephant Strong beer. That was like fucking 7-point-something% alcohol. The only problem was it tastes like shit.
So anyway, I just wanted to show that picture. That gun, there are some YouTube videos that show it firing, right? You would not believe how much that whips around, all right, when it launches the shells. Now, each shell is numbered, and they have to fire each shell in the number sequence that they have it, because every time they fire it, a few mils, all right, are actually leave the barrel. All right, so the shells behind it are just a little bit larger to fit. All right, in the gun.
Yeah.
For every time it's fired, so you're seeing basically the zenith of these heavy weapon systems, that are taking place, and that's basically what's happening in the West. On the East, when you talk about the Eastern Front, yes, you're right. The Russian winters are devastating. However, there's something that people forget about. In the wintertime, what can't you do? You can't dig in. You can't dig trenches in the wintertime.
Well, I mean, you can. Kinda. They did it in World War II during when Easy Company was stuck in the Battle of the Bulge.
No, that's France though. No, like Russian winters, no permafrost and stuff goes miles deep there. You're literally trying to smack away at ice. Like the Germans found out in World War II that mechanical equipment just breaks itself in Russia.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's like digging in Alaska. I got you. Yeah.
It's not this. It sounds. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I understand that during the Battle of the Bulge how horrible that was in World War II, but the Russian winters are completely different. And this is one of the problems that they have is the Germans will push them to the point of like, okay, now it's getting toward winter. Let's kind of settle down a little bit. Let's realign our forces to the other areas that we're actually losing a little bit of ground with, right, and help our allies, which is what they did. Like I said, they have shifted a lot of their forces south to support the Austro-Hungarians who had taken a beating from some of the Russian forces initially, all right? So all right, we stopped at Kitchener, and then on the 5th, you've got the Bulgarian forces on the move. And what's happening here is Bulgaria has looked upon this as saying, okay, it's our turn to take over this entire region, right? And they have begun a push. And here's Nis. You can see it right here. Right, they've already pushed through here through Nis, and then they continue their push, and later on they're going to take this area. And once they take this area here, Serbia, for all intents and purposes, is finished. There is no Serbia anymore. Serbia has basically been captured, and all their forces are then forced into Albania.
All right, you just skipped over one quick little point, and that was from the 4th. General Sir Charles Monro appointed to command Salonika. Sir William Birdswood to command the Mediterranean Expeditionary Forces. Now, that second fellow, William Birdswood, that's a name you guys should start to remember, because this is the turning point now where they're actually starting to get, he's a British officer, but he's an Aussie. And they're starting to get Australians into the higher ups, and we're sort of starting to say, hang on, how's about we start doing things a little bit differently? And it's when they start listening to guys like this Birdwood fellow is when things actually start turning for us.
Well, at this point, the Birdwood unfortunately gets there too late because he does not have control of a certain individual.
No.
He does not have control of Townsend, and Townsend is going to lead to a disaster. So,
but this is where it starts to turn. It's like now he's in there, and this is where, especially with the Dardanelles campaign, this is basically where they start to sort of realise, this is a bit too stupid.
So he has control of all the forces, including what's going on in Mesopotamia as well. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So his concentration at this point is really in the Dardanelles region rather than what's going to happen in Mesopotamia until it's too late.
Well, at the moment, yeah. But another thing that this dude does is that he uses the Australians properly, and that's another part where you do start to see shit starting to turn around.
Okay. That's interesting. But it does show some things. All right. We end up with the Greek Prime Minister Zamas has resigned. All right, the German airship LZ-39 is destroyed. Right? Basically, the airship. No big deal about the airships. They are what they are. They aren't doing a whole lot. The Second Battle of Champagne ends, which is basically stopping the offensive movement in the east or on the west. Right? We had talked about the use of the British forces and the French forces, how they first used gas at Lost and so forth, and those battles are now petering out. They're
Actually,
go ahead.
before we do get too far past it, yeah, the German airship thing, we didn't really touch on that last time. We only just basically made a brief mention of it. But another aspect of warfare that started off in World War One was terror bombing, because there was no view on accuracy with airships. They were literally being flown over London, indiscriminately bombing anywhere and everywhere. Hospitals, preschools, fuck it, doesn't matter. So that was the significance of the airships. It wasn't that they were accurate. They weren't making any tactical or strategic influence or anything like that. They were just being cunts.
Okay, and then finally, at this point, you end up with Salakatis. All right, is appointed the Greek premier. Right, and there's a picture of the guy. Now, what's important to understand that's been happening is the monarch of Greece, okay, was pro-German. The previous prime ministers were pro-English for all intents and purposes. And this guy, what he does is he tries to take a middle-of-the-road approach. He's going to try and keep both sides from and try and match both sides. So I mean, he's kind of in the middle. All right, there are some successes that he has, but in general, one of the good things that he does for for Greece is, for the most part, he keeps Greece out of the war. He keeps the government from siding with either the Germans or the English and joining the war. And for all intents and purposes, Greece remains neutral during the entire time.
And I kind of don't blame him. I mean, have you seen Greece's army's uniforms at the time? I mean, no kidding. They were those silly little sort of bloody halfway down your leg line dresses. Like, it was a white dress with frilly little red things all over it, and their fucking shoes, no kidding, were those silly bloody things you see in pantomimes that come to a point and little curl at the end with little fucking bloody pom-pom ball at the end of it. No kidding, they looked fucking ridiculous. If I was their country's leader, I'd be like, yeah, nah, fuck off, I'm not going to war. They'll fucking laugh at us.
So the next thing we have is the German cruiser. You pronounce this. I can't party because I can't pronounce this.
Undine.
Okay. It's sunk by a British submarine, and the Italian SS Arcona is sunk by an Austrian submarine. Now, this seems to be, who cares about this? And here's a picture of the cruiser. You can see that these are the smokestacks filled. These are the old style coal burners. All right. Ship. This was, I think, laid down. The keel was laid down in either late 1800s or like 1901 or 2 or something like that.
Pre-dreadnought, it's called. Pre-dreadnought.
Right. Now, the thing about this loss, and this is something that happens, all right, to the German fleet, all right, is the Kaiser looked upon the fleet as his personal pride and joy. Okay, and whenever he lost a ship, he felt it personally. So one of the things that he does is he basically goes back to his admirals and says, look, I'm going to restrict your use of the fleet elements, not so much the submarines, but the fleet elements. We're losing these fleet elements. I don't want to lose these things. And so he interferes with the operations that are going on constantly. And this is a mistake. This is one of the reasons why, unfortunately for the Germans in World War One, the high seas fleet never really engages, with the exception of Jutland, which we'll talk about. That's coming. All right. Because the Kaiser is so worried about his personal pride and joy and his hands-on approach to the fleet.
Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, like back in the day, I mean, this is another attitude that's changed since. It was the biggest throw of power that any country could have was its navy. The bigger the battleship, the larger the fleet, the more prowess that you had. And to lose a battleship was a really big deal. Just look at how the Hood went over when the Bismarck sunk that. Like that was a huge national tragedy. So
but when you guys lost the Hood, I think how many people survived the Hood sinking? Like 3.
Yeah.
Right. The only 14 people were lost in the loss of the Undine. The Undine.
But it's still the whole point is it's not the people that you've lost, it's the battleship itself. It's the actual prowess, the statesmanship and all this kind of stuff. It is a massive slog to your pride, and especially when you had a look at what had happened just before like the war with the pre and post dreadnought battleships. But the whole thing of the turbine basically made England start from scratch building up their entire fleet to have all turbines and shit. And basically, at that point, anybody who wanted to keep up with the British, all they needed to do was just match what the British were doing with the turbines. Don't have to worry about everything else. Everything else is obsolete. So if you've gone and taken all of this huge effort to make up this huge fleet of battleships to match the British and all this big status of prowess, because the only reason why the British are building more ships is because you've got the same amount of ships and they want to beat you in the next biggest fleet as well. So you're a threat to them. How much of a fucking hard cunt do you think you're going to feel there? And then if you lose one, oh, geez, how much of a blow to your personal pride do you think that'd be?
Well, yeah, but I understand that. But if you're not going to use the fleet, what the hell? What good was it?
But then you also have a look at the economic aspect of it as well. And lots of navies have done this over the years ever since, and it usually revolves around the reasons why most countries don't have aircraft carriers is that, well, okay, these battleships did cost me a hell of a lot, and losing them, I can't afford to replace them. So there's another little aspect of it. I don't send them out so we don't lose them.
Well, yeah, I understand, but then you're not using them. What good is it to hold on to these assets if you're just not going to utilize them all?
Yeah, well, dude, should have told that to the Japanese as well with the Yamato and the Net sister ship. But yeah, no, that's a thing that still goes on. I mean,
no, you're right. You are right that they didn't use the Yamato until the very end, and they basically, or the Musashi, which was its sister ship. They were overly protective. Oh, you're right.
It was the main argument, the reason why we stopped having an aircraft carrier after 1983. Why should we invest all this money into one gigantic ship? We put all our resources in one thing and it can be taken out in one foul swoop.
No, don't lie. That's not why Australia has no carrier fleet. It's because the United States has one. You don't need it. Come on, be real.
Well, there's truth to that too. But
we were going to get given one of the old ski jump fucking Invincible class aircraft carriers, and the British were even going to give us a whole bunch of Harriers to go with it, and we should have taken that up because now we are getting into short takeoff and vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, and we've got no fucking experience whatsoever.
Yeah, and those operations are not something that there's something you have to practice with to get good enough to where your people have enough faith in to be able to do these things.
Yeah, 40 years of experience would have been very, very handy right now.
Yeah, it sounds kind of stupid, but it really takes more time than people realize to work up a carrier and to get a carrier working where the crew is working, understands the workings of the carrier and how to work the carrier, how to utilize it effectively.
Hey, I'm not a military guy. I never claimed to be. But don't they say that a carrier is pretty much a floating city? You got to treat it as such, right? So you have to keep it supplied. You need fresh water, you need food, you need all this shit to keep it up.
Logistically, you're exactly right. But the other part of it is the fact that how to run operations efficiently. Okay, the simple little things like where a person is standing during a takeoff. All right, where you want them to be standing. These things seem to be obvious. Oh no, you just put the person there. Not necessarily. It depends upon the type of operations. It depends on what you're trying to do with the carrier. It depends on the kind of carrier operation that you're running with. And these little things can make huge differences, because guess what happens if a plane crashes on the carrier? All right. Now you've got a problem. That carrier, for all intents and purposes, can't operate until it's clear.
What happens what happens when one of the launchers breaks? You know,
on American carriers, you got 3 more. So there's 4 launches on your American carriers. But yeah, like the British Invincible class never had launchers. That was the whole point of the ski jump. Because the planes originally were supposed to take off and land like helicopters, but it didn't really work out like that.
You can't take off fast. One of the things they learned is you can't take off fast enough.
And
it sounds kind of strange, but you can't take off as many aircraft as you can just launching them and shooting them down the flight line.
A friend of mine, his dad was a Navy guy. He served aboard a carrier, and he told us one time about the band breaking, and it took somebody's fucking head off. Pretty much.
Yeah, the arrestor cable.
Yeah, that happens. Like he wasn't fucking with 2 kids.
Yeah, no. That definitely happens. Yep, there's even footage on it. This one, it goes skewering across the deck, and like I think one guy gets taken out. He gets his ankles taken out. Another guy looks around. Oh shit! And he does a jump as it goes underneath him. But no, they fucking break. Yes, absolutely.
Yep, and when they break, they travel at high speed, and yes, they can cut people in half. There are a number of people who have died when that kind of situation happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even this is going to sound stupid, but if you're standing in the wrong place when the jet lands or the aircraft lands, right, and it grabs that arrestor cable, guess what? If you're in the way of that arrestor cable, you're toast.
Yep.
Okay, one last question before we get back on topic. What would happen if somebody actually buzzed the tower, like in Top Gun? That's not cool, right? Like that's not something they do, is it?
Well, see, I've heard a story, and this bloke got away with it. And he was an SR-71 pilot, and basically the story finishes off with 20 years later, he's left the Air Force and he's now a civilian pilot, and he's given some flight controller a deadhead seat, and conversation starts up, and, hey, were you working this airport this day in 1983? Yeah, why? Do you remember, like, the SR-71 coming past the window? Yeah, why? That scared the fuck out of everybody. Yeah, that was me. Yeah, anyway, so it does happen. It's not legal, but in certain circumstances, yes, it does happen.
Do they frown on it? Yes. Do pilots dicks like that? Yes. All right. Can it end your career? All right. If they find out it's you, yeah.
How could they not find out it's you? These planes are tagged, dude.
This is how it happens. The guy sits up there and does it, right? Several people are very upset. They call up saying, "We want this guy's head." His commander, it comes down to his commander. His commander goes, "I'll deal with it," and then goes in there, reads the guy the riot act. Don't do it again. It wasn't funny, and I won't charge you this time.
Yeah, no, and pilots, you have to be a certain brand of fucking arrogant to be a fucking pilot, right?
Well, yeah, you have to be a brand of arrogant. That's how they killed a bunch of freaking Italian tourists. All right, on the when they cut that cable car link, because they're being a bunch of arrogant asses, and the Navy pilots are the worst.
Yeah, MC missed out one little step in this with the chewing out process. Yes, the pilot does get a chewing out after his CO's finished laughing. Because
Yeah, no, like everybody who signs up to be a naval aviator has seen Top Gun. I guarantee it, and they all want to buzz the tower. All of them.
well, just the one with the SR-71, because he lit the afterburners as he went past, and that's a bit of a spectacle in and of itself, because it doesn't make one bang, it makes four. It goes in quick succession like that, and it's a really guttural thumping sound. Now you do that going past some building, all of a sudden they just hear four almighty fucking god awful bangs in quick succession. They're thinking they're being bombed. So yeah, you can imagine that bloke's CO, Brian Shule's CO, just went. He did what? Have they finished screaming yet?
You know what, Matt? That's funny because I don't like heights either, but I went to flight school. If as long as I have something solid below my feet, then I have the illusion of being safe. So, like when I'm dangling, I have a goddamn problem. If I had to bail out of a plane, that might be an issue.
See, that's funny you say that, because I actually experienced that the first jump I ever did. Perfectly fine on the plane. As soon as there was nothing under my feet, I'm sort of like, hang on a minute. Fuck it.
Okay, we're ready to get back to World War One.
Yep.
Yeah, after I read Falcon's comments here. In the United States it's punished harshly. He's talking about the flyby. Usually you get suspended or your ratings pulled. What's that mean? Your rank pulled? Is that what he's talking about?
Your flight rating.
Okay. So like let's say you're fucking the top of, on the top of the food chain, you might actually drop a little bit because you want to be a fucking stunt boy, right?
It's more like you might still have your wings, but you're not fucking flying anything anymore.
But once again, when it comes to the military doing it, it's really up the commanders all understand this for the most part, and they tend to be lenient on the guys who have the balls to do something like this. Now, this is something that's very important. If just because you got the balls to do it, if that commander doesn't like you, you're done. Okay, they will drum you out. You will no longer be in the military. All right, so this is one of the reasons why you don't see it happening all that much. Right? Does it happen? Yeah, but it's really rare, and the reason for it is because, quite frankly, some people take a much dimmer view of it, and when your commander, his ass is on the line, because the reaming goes up the chain and then back down, and when shit rolls downhill, if the ball has enough steam, there's nothing the commander can do to save your ass.
Well, no, and that's understandable. But yeah, go ahead and get back to the timeline, man. Go for it.
All right. Once again, another battle for Izano. Hanzi Izano. Say that again.
Isonzo.
Izanzo, which is Caprietto. So you're basically another. Let's do it again, and it's just people are just getting butchered at this point. Now, one of the who is that? The poet, right? That is the British poet. The big one that everyone talks about how he was an ambulance driver for during these battles.
Hemingway,
that's right. Hemingway was witnessing these battles. Okay, it's just no one's doing anything. You're not even getting yards. You're just going up into an area and getting chopped down, and the counterattacks are doing the same thing.
And once again, there's a joke they did in Blackadder Goes Forth, where fucking Blackadder goes into his commanding officer, Lord Melchett's office, and he sees there's this little what looks like a mud map on the desk, and his CEO exclaims proudly, "Wow, that's a representation of the land that we took yesterday." And another question comes forth, and the response is, "No, that's the actual land we took yesterday. That little piece on the table, that's it." true to scale.
All right.
Well, no, and Falcon's saying it broke Hemingway. Did it break him or did it make him? He became the famous poet after the war, right?
Well, see, yeah, he might have become a famous poet. Doesn't mean that his life wasn't fucking miserable.
Yeah, okay, Hemingway. I mean, in a lot of ways, mentally, you can say that it broke it. Now, it's one of the things that we haven't talked about is there were a lot of well-known artists.
Tolkien was on the Western Front. He fought in France, right?
Right. There was a lot of well-known people, right, that were participating in this war and died in this war. Very young, up-and-coming names that people had just, heard about that were a part of this. Were part of this war. It's amazing that certain individuals actually didn't. All right, it's amazing that people like Max Planck and Einstein didn't die in this war.
Yeah, or J.R.R. Tolkien. He fought on the Western Front in France. You have, Adolf Hitler. He fought in the war. He was there. He was in the trenches.
He almost died too. He almost died too.
He actually gets gassed. He gets Hitler is noted for his bravery. Actually, and is gets one of the I think the second highest award in the German military. All right, for his conduct, he is a runner. All right, he's one of the people who, when the battle goes forward, when they need somebody to go run back and tell the generals what's happening, that was him.
That's an important position, actually. That's like that. Well, no, really, it's like being like during the Civil War, they would have their their aide that just followed them around.
Yeah, but he wasn't an aide. He was just the hey, you go run to do this. Hey, you go run to do that. He's what they call a gopher.
But the thing is, though, hey, run across this line as we're assaulting and go tell the general and get orders and then come back to me. And he survived it. That's something.
It shows you what kind of a little bit about his character for sure. Okay.
And I'm not praising the man here. All right, don't get it twisted. I'm just saying that's a job where it's thankless and it's very dangerous.
It is. In that regard, you're correct. Right. Ship licensing committee formed in Great Britain. Order in the council prohibits voyages between foreign ports except under license. What exactly are they saying there, Marty?
Okay, basically they're pretty much saying that, like, well, if you want to deal with us, you've got to deal with us exclusively, unless, like, you're going to Liberia or something like that. Well, okay, that's German territory, so but it does benefit us. So if you're running around going to German ports and stuff like that, unlicensed, then you're working for the Germans, then your ship can be detained and your crew arrested and all this kind of stuff. It's pretty much just an extended part of the blockade.
So basically what they're saying is you have to, if you want to come to our port, you have to be under license, and we only allow you license if you're only dealing with us.
Or any of our allies, because this does still extend to the French ports and fucking who else we got still allied with us at the time. So, it's basically to try and prevent free movement of German commerce and trade.
Okay, the requisitioning committee forms in Britain. The order of the council reauthorizes requisition of ships for carriage of foodstuffs. What is it referring to there?
Okay, this is one little problem of being stuck on an island, is that England's actually quite reliant on the outside sources, and this was the whole point of the convoys and rationing and stuff during World War II. Is that basically, if there's any slight shortage in supplies that are coming in, they've got to go to rationing, and that's basically what this is. It's the beginning of a committee to sort out how and how much they're going to ration.
How they're going to ration food. Was that what it is?
Yeah, because you are starting to look at like, you know, the same thing that happened in World War II with the convoys and whatnot, because convoys and all this kind of stuff will come into World War One by the end of this, and the Germans will use submarines to try and basically strangle Great Britain.
Okay.
You know, I understand why the United States enters the war, but looking back on it and just going day by day through this timeline, why the fuck would we jump into this? What the fuck? Are you kidding me?
Well, it's a completely different country back then. I mean, like, yeah, you had an isolationist outlook on the world. It was like, yeah, you can come here, give us all your downtrodden and your poor and all that kind of stuff, but don't get us involved with your shit, kind of deal.
Well,
Which is a good deal.
It does show you why the United States did not jump into this war. All right, the first British advance on Baghdad begins. All right, and here we go.
Bagpipes in Baghdad. Sorry, Eminem popped in my head for some reason.
What you have right here is you have, if I'm not mistaken, you have Kitchener, or not Kitchener, but Townsend. He's attempting to go. One of them's going up this way, the other one's going this way, in an attempt to force the Ottoman Turks and take Baghdad. Okay, this battle, for all intents and purposes, is kind of a draw. All right, Townsend, his forces are first of all outnumbered close to 2-1, 3-1. The Turkish forces are poorly led, and I mean just poorly led. They get mauled. All right, one of their premier divisions that they're using against the British loses 65% of its unit is lost in casualties. All right. However, the British didn't get off unscathed in this case. All right, they got their own as well. All right, and as a result, they begin to pull back. All right, so they get all the way to here, and then they pull back to here. Okay, this is going to become important later on. All right, Sensuzi commences hostilities against the British by attacking the Egyptian post at Solicum. All right, this is basically just spoiling attacks in Egypt. They don't have much of an effect really. All right, but it's showing that the Turks are still thinking aggressively. All right, they're not in a defensive position, although on the 15th, they have to retreat from Tehran. All right, because the Russians are pushing them out of Tehran. The Bulgarian forces continue to press the Serbians. All right, they take the Babnu Pass and the Prilep in southern Serbia. Then you have this, and this is kind of important here. The Anglo-French conference in Paris discusses how can they aid Serbia and the Dardanelles. And the reality is they can't do either. But they're talking about it, all right? Now, they're still looking at the Dardanelles campaign, and this is where Fardy's 100%. They're still trying to force it. They're still trying to continue the Dardanelles campaign. Nobody is willing to give up on it, all right? The Germans have done something that people are shocked with, though. All right, and the British hospital ship, the Angelia, hits a mine off of Dover. What the Germans are doing is the Germans are setting mines in an area, and these mines are free floating mines. They're not creating a mine field. They're literally with their subs going out and then laying down a layer of mines to let them float, hopefully, in the British shipping lanes.
I do the same thing. Why not?
Well, See, if it hits a hospital ship, then, everyone's going to go, ooh, those propaganda pictures with the Nazi and their jackboot on that nun that's flailing for her life and all that, they must be true.
Yeah, well, the Red Cross symbol, that's just the target. Sorry.
Well, okay, but you got to think of something here. When you set a mine and you're letting it float around the ocean, whose
Might hit
ship
your own
does
stuff.
it hit?
Yeah.
It's fair game, yeah. Anybody's.
Just like a bullet, once it's fired, it's indiscriminate.
So, I mean, they're attempting, of course, where they're trying to do this. For the most part, they know that the British are going to be the most affected, all right? But you do run into, like Marty said,
yeah, no.
When it hits a British ship, if it hits a hospital ship, people get a little annoyed.
Well, or an American ship, because at this point, America's not in the war. But Falcon has a question for you guys, and you would know, not me. Did those mines work? Were they effective?
Yes. They did cause people to sort of be concerned about where they were going. In fact, that there was one point over the other side near Scotland, Scapa Flow. There was several ships that refused to come into the ports because the Germans were coming along. They'd mine it. A ship would go into the port. It would get blown up. They'd come and clear the mines. The Germans would come along, remine it with their submarine. Another ship would go in, being told it's clear. And then the rest of them were like, no, fuck off, we're not coming in. So now you've got all this commerce and shit sitting off the coast that can't come in. That could be foodstuffs. It could be like money for payments. It could be ammunition and explosives. That's all now sitting there useless because no one wants to come near your ports. I'd say that's pretty successful right then and there on in itself. But you have a look at what happened to one of Titanic's sister ships. It got sunk. It was a hospital ship, and it got sunk in the Mediterranean from a mine. So,
what was the name of that ship? There was the Titanic and the Titan, right?
There was the Titanic, the Britannic, and the Olympic. And I think it was the Britannic that was the one that got sunk with the mine. The Olympic, I think they got torpedoed, but I can't remember. But yeah, no. So like, now you've lost yourself a gigantic piece of trade and commerce, which was a passenger liner before the war and probably would be a passenger liner afterwards, but now it's sunk. But then there's also the cleanup aspect after it, because they did try to clean up the ones that they put in fields, but you've got these things floating all over the joint, and you have what we did have. No shit, the British were still having mines floating up on their beaches as late as the 60s and 70s. So there's that.
The other thing about mines is exactly what Farty was saying is mines serve two purposes. Yes, they're there to blow up enemy ships, but they have another purpose, and that is a denial of an area, to deny the enemy easy access through an area, to create a situation where if you're going to go through this area, you can't do it quickly. You can't just steam a ship right through this area, all right, without running the risk of something happening. That's what mines. That's what mines are good for, right? To deny an area, and it's the same thing that's true on the ocean mines as it is on land mines, right? What you're doing is can they kill enemy forces on land mines? Yeah, but what's the main purpose? When you mine an area, you're saying, if you're going to go through this area, you're going to have to do it A, very slowly, and B, you're going to take casualties doing it.
And it doesn't actually have to be the mine there. I mean, just stopping the ships is just as good as blowing them up. Because even if someone says, oh, we think that Scapa Flow's been mined, and everyone just goes, right, fuck it, we're not going anywhere near it, there's your job done. And then that's going to take however many hours for them to get their minesweeper out and then clear the place out and say, right, nope, it's clear, it's clear of mines. And then all someone has to do is just as soon as they've said that, nope, there's a mine over there. Now everyone's like, nope, fuck it. Now they've got to go through all the process again. So there's more than just blowing shit up. There's lots of time that it takes once you've found the mines, that you need to go through the process of disarming it and clearing it. And it's not just there, because if you found one, there's got to be more than one. So you've got to make sure the whole place is cleared, or at least you got your channel cleared or whatever. So that can fuck with your economics and all this kind of stuff. And you just have to look at things happening nowadays. A fly farts in a paddock in fucking Perth, and the wind generated from that somehow makes oil prices jump 3 cents a litre. So
does that answer your question? So
I think I bored him to death.
Oh no, my son was throwing a fit. I had to be muted. I'm here.
Okay, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, and where are we at here on the timeline? The 23rd or
the Battle of Sestafon?
Okay, well, go ahead and continue. I'll jump back in. I'm paying attention again. My son was throwing a huge fit, so sorry.
Okay, the Battle of Sestafon is part of the Mesopotamian campaign with Townsend. All right. Now, what I found unusual about this was as the British retreated, all right, strategically, all right, there's several things that have happened. Not the least of which is 2 days later, you see Wander Gotz is part of this. Well, he was part of this battle. And he's really the main reason why the British weren't successful, all right, in actually taking it apart. But one of the things that does happen here is as both sides begin to retreat, okay, Goltz realizes the British are retreating to try and regroup, and he stops the retreat of the Turkish forces, all right. This is important because now they're going to start going on the offensive, where they've been on the defensive going toward Baghdad before. Now they're going to go on the offensive, right?
And they're going to push the British back, aren't they?
The British
eventually, that's what's going to happen.
Here because they refer to this battle, all right, they refer to as the Battle of Pistapon. Which shows you how they looked at the battle and the forces and how they were misutilized in this battle.
Oh, wow. The British like to take the piss out of themselves, don't they?
All right. General Sir H. Smith Dorrien is appointed the commander-in-chief of the British forces in East Africa. Right? Did not take command.
When does Churchill come back into the picture? Is that next year, or...?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Right. Rovestero is taken by the Italian forces. These are the forces when they're trying to take Tarantino and some of the other areas along the coast.
They're trying to take Tarantino. Quentin, run, Quentin.
Yeah. No. They obviously haven't seen any of his movies because they wouldn't be trying to take Tarantino if they'd seen at least one.
They're basically trying to take this area here. All right, and Trieste. That's the area that they're focused on trying to take. Okay, so they're making advances, but they never are able to basically take this almost like peninsula area here, this little outcrop, which is right here at Pula, is the major Austria-Hungarian naval base that all their ships are sailing from, especially the submarines that are creating havoc right here in the Mediterranean.
What are the Persians doing? Is Iran pretty much staying out of it?
Well, Iran is part of the empire. The Turkish is part of the
That's
Turkish
what I thought.
empire.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And they're basically what has happened. What you're seeing now is the Russian forces is they've pushed all the way through here, and they're now threatening Tehran.
Oh, too bad Russia didn't take it. Oh, life would be so much better right now.
Right.
I don't know about that. Look at what happened with Afghanistan.
Oh, right. You got a point.
Okay. So that's what.
So that's why they're the Ottoman Turks. I got you. Yeah.
All right. Now the Solemn Serbian government has to leave Prizren, right, and starts heading down further south. They're basically losing territory as the Bulgarian forces and the Austro-Hungarian forces meet up and start to push them completely out and conquer Serbia. The British military operations in the Census commence. All right, where that is here. Let me see if I can bring this up. Here, this is Solokum in this area right here. All right, as they're gonna now take over this area and then start pushing back all the way through. Now, the Central Powers, you got to remember the Central Powers, they do have ships, okay, in the Mediterranean, and every now and then they're causing fights here.
Yeah, are they ships or are they dinghies? I mean, what are we really talking about here?
I don't know. Proper dreadnought fucking battleships and stuff like that.
Well, I don't know if they have battleships, but they definitely have battle cruisers, and they've got their heavy weapons. They do have real warships. They're not little dinghies. They're not coming up there with dinghies and fighting with this. They're
It's not Luigi. It's not Luigi with his fishing boat and a machete.
Right. No.
Fuck it off, you fucking a bastard.
And of course, every time that they do this, here, let me. Well, I can't do it with that map. Let's go back to this map. Here. You gotta think about this. The focus of the British Navy is in this area, right? Because they're worried about the Dardanelles. This is what they're trying to keep these. They have to keep a number of naval ships alive here, all right, constantly on station in order to provide support. Otherwise, these troops that are on the beachheads in this area would get easily walked over, right? So they're kind of stuck in this area here, and what happens is down they'll come. Hit an area here, and then they'll run back. And the British are hard-pressed to try and stop them from doing
that. So, there's no campaigning going on in Egypt or anything right now, though, right?
Well,
that's all pretty calm.
They're starting to, and that's what this is. That's what this area here is doing. They're starting to take over.
Okay, because I know there was fighting there in World War I. I was just wondering when it actually started to break out.
In Solom in this area is where they start making, okay, we have to pull out of Solom at least initially. Then we're going to come back. We're going to take it. We're going to solidify our hold there, and then we're going to make the push all the way through this area here. That's what the intention is.
Don't the British end up holding Cairo, right?
Yes. They take over Cairo. They kick out the king there who's threatened to kick them out. They said, no.
That's what I thought, yeah. But like I said before, I am well versed in Civil War. I can argue that all day. World War I, I'm kind of taking your guys' lead here. Okay. The British military operations, like I said, against Solom, all right? The Entente powers send Norte to the Greek government demanding non-interference with Allied troops, guaranteeing the eventual restoration of all Greek territory. You got to remember if you remember back, they took that island of Lesbos. Yes, and they're still making a stink over that, right?
Well, yeah. This island was taken for them, and they're basically. The British are basically saying, well, this is ours now, so you'll do what we say.
Well, yeah, that's their jump-off point. They need that territory, and at this point, they're a colonial power. They will take what they need and get over it.
The problem with it, though, is that they got the wrong island. The one that they really wanted was Lesbos. Because of all the Lesbos.
But the other thing that they've been trying to push for, of course, is they're trying to push Greece into the war, right? And Greece is not having anything. They want nothing to do with it. For one thing, if you take a look at this, Greece is kind of stuck in the middle of this, right? Here's the Allies on this side. Here's the Central Powers on this side. And who's in the middle? Well, Greece is. So if Greece had joined the war, what would have happened?
They are the battlefield.
Yeah.
No, and you can see Athens shelled. You don't want that.
Right. And once again, you have the Central Powers. They control all this area. They will control all this area when they're finished.
Could you imagine the Germans rolling into Athens, dude? That would not have been pretty.
The Greeks are just leaving the Greeks and Turkey, all right, to the Greeks and the Turks is always a good idea, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Greeks will just end up costing you too much money.
All right. Hey, I need to step away for just a second. I'll be back in just a minute. Can you continue, Farty?
Yeah. All right. Fuck. Where were we? Let's see. Field Marshal von der Goltz takes command of the Turkish forces in Mesopotamia. Danish merchants and manufacturers conclude agreements with British government to restrict supplies to Germany. Yeah, that kind of shit.
Okay, that's interesting. We could talk about that. So you have the actual war, right? The aggressive powers colliding, but you also have a trade war going on in the background, don't you?
Yeah, well, this sort of goes in with that the thing with the shipping licenses and stuff like that. Like, while it was a world war, like no one actually called it a world war at the time, and it really wasn't until after World War II that it was sort of termed as a world war. But yeah, there was still free trade and all this kind of stuff. I mean, like we've mentioned this before about like who the Americans were dealing with. You know, would they be more predisposed to deal with the Germans or the French or the British?
Well, they would have preferred the Germans, but there was no way of getting supplies into Germany, so we ended up trading with the British. But,
Well, actually,
you know, the sentiment in the United States at the time was we should be trading with the Germans. Fuck the bloody Brits. You know what I mean?
Actually, if anything, it was more the French that you guys were wanting to deal with, and by proxy, you had to deal with the British and then get up the nose of the Germans at the same time. So it didn't matter which way you went, you were still sort of, you know. But yeah, even things like textiles and even firearms manufacturers and stuff like that, they were still peddling their wares around the world and all this kind of shit. And some governments did sort of go, hey, no, deal with us exclusively because, you know, you don't want to deal with them. They blow up fucking hospital ships and step on nuns and stuff like that. Yeah, you still got to clothe your army and all that kind of stuff, and you know.
Well, no, and that's what the United States was selling a lot of was textiles at the time. But also the president behind the scenes started to ramp up military production. Not to peak, obviously. That would be too overt. But he did start to ramp up. And I see your back, MC. Do you disagree with me?
No. But the manufacturing that's being brought up is not because the government is telling them to do it. It's more because, hey, there's an opportunity to sell stuff.
Mm.
You got to think the United States doesn't have the government doesn't have control over the industries in and of themselves. All right, unless they're going to start spending money. And at this point in time, all right, at this part of the war, the U.S. government is not spending money on anything.
Oh no, this is between
didn't they start to try and push the bond idea though quite a bit to buy federal bonds to kind of ramp up the coffers?
That's not so much later.
Oh, okay. I'm jumping the gun there. All right.
Yeah, no, this is more between the British and the Danish governments, and it was more a case of, yeah, sell to us because you're not really going to be allowed to sell to anybody else. That was more of the whole aspect of it.
All right. Now here's like I said, this is the portrait of Vandergoots. Okay.
Is that Hitler's grandfather?
No, this is not.
Do you see the resemblance, or am I tripping?
I think you're just looking at the hairstyle of the time. You know, the little part here and the little small mustache. I think that's where you're seeing.
He does look a bit like, you know, like say for instance some 70s TV show like Are You Being Served or something like that. They're having a German day and they have they're supposed to be Hitler actor come on. He looks vaguely enough, just vaguely enough like him, but it's dead set
all
not him.
Germans look alike to the Aussies.
It's like it's B grade fucking discount Hitler.
Discount Hitler. I like that.
But you remember this guy has taken over those forces, all right? And
Pantomime Hitler.
In the Ottoman Turks. Now, why is that important? It's important because right here is the British retreat from Pistapon, all right, and back to Al Qut, and he's the one that manages the siege of Al Qut. He's the one for all the Turkish soldiers when they're properly led, fight. when they're misled, all right, they're just basically cannon fodder.
Okay, I'm laughing my ass off. Way to go, Falcon. Mein Grand Fuhrer.
All right. Did you read Albert Thomas's announcements for arrangements of completed inter-allied organization of munitions? This is late.
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing. That is so funny to me. I don't know why. Grand Fuhrer.
Grand Fuhrer is feeling a little tired. He now has to go and sit in Mein Kampf chair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go sleep in the gas chamber. Okay, I'm done. Maybe.
He's just got to go warm something up in the ovens.
God damn it, no! I said I was done. No. You're driving a Volkswagen to the corner store. The ashtray's full.
This guy's a literary critic, kind of like cookbooks and stuff. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, God damn it. We're horrible people.
Hey,
okay.
hungry?
Now, this here where they're talking about the arrangements for inter-allied organization of munitions. This is way late, all right. And this is the problem. Of course, is that you got a British rifle, you got a French rifle. They're using different ammo.
Yep.
What's the need for that? There is no need for that. It's increasing the logistics supply unnecessarily. All right. And this is true of everything going down there. When you talk about rifle ammunition, that's only one part of it. You're also dealing with artillery. You're dealing with, all these different aspects of munitions. All right. For as far as the calibers, the weights, the shells, the explosives, all this stuff. No, they haven't. The Allies at this point hadn't looked at one another and said, okay, if you want shells, how do I supply you shells? Well, no. If your shells aren't of the right caliber, if we can't make the shells to the proper dimensions and proper specifications, then it's useless.
Well, yeah, no, and here's the thing. What is the manufacturing base for the Western powers at this point? Half of France is on fire.
Well, not half of France. Part of northern France has been invaded, but most of France is secure. Most of France is really a munitions factory at this point. They really are.
Yeah, well, like the armories like Saint Etienne and like fucking there's a couple others, but yeah, they were still operating through the war. They were still making machine guns.
Well, don't they have an armory at the Bastille or Bastille or however you fucking say
that? Bastille. Yeah, the Bastille is not exactly an armory, as what we're trying to say. But like, yeah, the armory over in France is a gun factory. The Bastille armory is a museum.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. But no, I'm wondering, are they importing this stuff from the United States? I know part of that answer is yes, but who else are they getting this from?
Most of what they're getting from the United States, though, is raw material. Most of what they're getting from the U.S. is raw material. Yeah, they're getting, for lack of a better term, powder. All right, from the United States, but they're not getting turned artillery.
You can't tell me Winchester and Remington weren't selling them firearms. Come
Winchester
on.
and Remington were trying to.
No, they were. Like, yeah, no, like I said, there were still companies that were still, building out shit, and Colt was even doing it the same thing as well. Colt was supposed to be making the Thompson submachine gun, but because they're Colt, they just went, fuck it. And they ended up doing like 20% of their order, and I think it was either Remington or Winchester ended up being tasked to take up what Colt couldn't produce.
Really? Colt couldn't do it? That's weird.
Not so much couldn't, but more wouldn't. Because they had this attitude back in the day of like, we're Colt, what are you going to do?
Huh. I didn't know that. Interesting. Go ahead and continue. I just, like, this idea of how in the early 1900s, they're actually getting the physical weapons. Because we talked all about the Civil War, MC, And how fucking hard was it for the South to get their hands on a goddamn musket? They had to steal it off a Yankee body. You know what I mean?
Well, but
Well,
that
see,
a lot of that had to do with the fact that you couldn't get the steel. The reality is if the South had the ability to deal with steel, to manufacture and turn steel, then it wouldn't have been a problem. But not only didn't the South have the facilities to industrialize, turn steel, and so forth, they didn't have the raw materials. Theoretically, they could bring in raw materials. However, one of the problems the South had with trying to bring in that kind of material is, iron ore is iron ore. You can't just bring it in by the barrel load. You got to bring it in by the ship load. And there was no shipping really going on, all right, in any kind of capacity that the South could handle.
Well, no, and if Mexico would have sold us minerals and stuff, dude, one, how are you gonna get it to the Confederacy?
Never going to tell you what you needed ever.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Why would they was what I was getting to, right? Like, one, you can't transport it here. The rail gauges are all different, and there was no rail line through the Californias and down into Mexico. It wasn't gonna fucking happen. And second, why the hell would they? We just fought a war with them 10 years ago.
Especially considering that Texas was a Confederate state. Yeah, that would have been a bit difficult to get them to agree to do it. But the difference here, though, in World War I is Germany. Yeah, okay. Do they need raw materials? Yeah, but they have a lot of raw materials of their own. They have iron ore. They have, mines for coal and stuff. They can produce their own weapons. Okay, so the blockade on Germany is it hurting? Yes. Will it hurt them even more over time? Of course it does. But initially, it's not crippled.
another thing with this Albert Thomas fella is that we actually didn't achieve what he was trying to do until about the 50s. And that was still something that plagued us during World War II. And it was mainly a thing of, as I mentioned before, that this wasn't recognised as a world war. They didn't think that there was going to be another one, especially not in 20 years. So there wasn't really a whole thing of why does half of Europe all need to use 5.56 for? Why do they all need to use standardised shells for a Carl Gustav? Why do they all need to know how to use a 66 millimeter law? Things like that. Because we do have this problem. We did have this problem during World War II as well. Oh, ammunition's coming. Okay, right. Whose ammunition is it? Oh, it's 303 British. Oh, fuck, well, we're Americans. We need 30-06. Or your ammunition's going off to the French who are fucking firing 8mm Lebel or 7mm Lebel. And then there's the actual types of ammunition too. I mean, like just with the Americans alone, you had 30-06 for your rifles and machine guns. You had 30 carbine for a carbine rifle. You had 45 caliber for a submachine gun and a pistol. And you also had 9mm for a submachine gun and a pistol, all in the one fucking unit.
Well, no, and they found this out during the Revolutionary War, where the French sent over weapons, and they didn't fucking work because they didn't send the ammo, and we didn't use that ammo.
Yeah. So basically, that's what this Albert Thomas bloke was supposed to organise. Is that it didn't matter who you were, what unit you were fighting for, where you were at. The ammunition that you get is supposed to be the same ammunition as the bloke next to you, and the bloke next to him, and the bloke 6 miles down the trench. Didn't really work out that way, but that's what they were trying to do.
But do you really want everything uniform, though? Do you want it to where the enemy can pick up your ammunition and use it on you?
Well, it kind of works as a double-edged sword, but in a good way, because that also means that you can pick up any communist block weapon if you've got com block ammunition.
If you have his weapon, you can do it the same thing to him. So it is a double-edged sword, but yeah. All right, you want to go on to the next one, the General Charles Monroe?
Yeah. Let's continue into December and move along.
Okay, good. But I do want to read this one last line for the 25th of November. All right, and go ahead, Farty. This is yours.
Oh, General Charles Monroe, appointed Commander-in-Chief, reconstituted Mediterranean Expeditionary Forces. Reconstituted. That's a nice way of putting fucking, piling up fucking ground meat. Anyway.
Ouch. Yeah, well, no, let's talk about that. Don't move on from that. Like, don't hold back on that one. Reconstituted. Isn't that the bitch-ass term for I murdered my entire unit and we had to rebuild it?
It's more the bitch-ass term of I annihilated several of my units and now I'm making them all into one. Yeah. With Sir William Birdwood, General Officer Commanding the Dardanelles Army. So basically, it's just Monroe and Birdwood. Basically, they've been said, here's the Dardanelles. Yeah, go do something with that.
Yeah, well...
But one of the things they did do, didn't they just basically start calling off all offensive operations?
Pretty much, yeah. Is at this point there that they went into just a holding phase, and this is when they actually do the pullout. You'll see what they're trying to achieve here.
Well, is it a pullout or do the Turks force them out? Which one is it?
No, officially it's called an evacuation. Because we don't retreat. So by technical terms in the Commonwealth, it's you don't retreat, you retire. But we basically pulled out. So and it wasn't like we were being shot at while we were doing it too.
That's what I was asking, right? Like, the one thing about George Washington, actually a couple things. One, he wasn't the best general. Sorry, wasn't. But you know what he was good at? He was good at running. Damn good at it. Every fucking time he did that shit perfectly. He was good.
Well, he was good at keeping his force intact. Right.
Which is another word for running, MC. Come on.
No, well, there's running and there's running. If you run, if you truly run in a battle, you're done.
Oh yeah, we could talk about Bull Run if you want to go there, but I get what you're saying.
That game, we can talk about several other battles. Do you really want to play that game?
Oh yeah. How's day one of Shiloh treating you, buddy?
How did day two go?
I don't remember day two. What are you talking about? I remember half the battle, homie.
All right. So on the 30th, you had the Serbians, because the Portuguese never really do a whole lot in the war. Right? They pretty much stay out of it anyway. Serbia retreats through Albania. The retreat begins. All right. The formal signature of the Pact of London by Great Britain, France, Russia, Japan, and Italy. It takes place.
Okay, so the Italians, what are they really doing besides getting themselves slaughtered and dying in the Alps?
The Italians are attacking through here. They're trying to take
yeah, but they can't. They can't move through there.
They're hedging their bets.
They're attacking. They're the one thing that they are doing is they are causing the Austro-Hungarians to defend these areas.
So they're the feint maneuver, right? You attack with the weaker force on the right flank, and then you collide with the left, right?
Well, they don't have that kind of coordination.
Here's Italy's strategic plans in a nutshell for basically anything and everything that you could call a conflict or a war or anything like that. Oh, look at over there. They start a war. We go over there with them. Oh, look, they're starting to look like they're losing. We go over there with the other peoples. That's it, in a nutshell.
Basically, what they've been trying to do is they looked upon this as an opportunity to carve up Austro-Hungary and get Slovenia, get Croatia, and have it under their control. And this would have made, for all intents and purposes, the Adriatic Sea kind of like a little lake for themselves. They really want to take this area, this whole area over so they control it. They would even like to take Albania. This is the area they want to control so that they could control this little waterway. which is very important to Italy. Always has been. But that's their strategic goal. That's what they're strategically. That's what they were trying to do. They're just doing a bad job of it.
Well, what happened to the Italians and the Greeks? They used to be powerful. What happened?
As far as what happened to the Italians?
Is it like their mental, like, is it a cultural psyche type thing where they just lost their edge? I mean, come on, the Greeks, they had the Spartans. Are you fucking kidding me? The Italians,
Okay.
Rome, anybody? Rome?
The Spartans, all right, were never going to be a power in any kind of modern type of ideal, because for crying out loud, one of the things they did every year was declare war on part of their populace, number one. All right. Number two is all the women basically ran all the real estate about everything. And this is not a 19th issue, folks. I'm just saying that there was a dichotomy there, and the women themselves were being in charge, were very picky about who they decided they were going to wed. And as a result, the Spartans basically, it increased the amount of homosexual activity, which was very prevalent in Sparta. They basically bred themselves out of existence.
That's not what I meant by that. What I meant was the attitude, the cultural attitude of, you fucking cheap shot me, I will kill you, your family's family, your mailman's family. I don't give a fuck. That's how the Spartans were.
The Greeks are still that way. All right.
Yeah, still fucking each other in the ass.
The Greeks and the Italians are still that way on a personal level, right? Just not on a national level.
Well, why doesn't that bleed over into the national identity? Like, think about the United States, right? We are loud, obnoxious, and we throw our weight around. What do we do on the world stage? We're loud, obnoxious, and we throw our weight around. Hello?
Not really.
And Italians are lovers and not fighters, so while you're being brash and throwing your weight around and being all noisy, they're in the back room fucking your girlfriend.
Well, now they're all gonna die. When are we bombing Rome? No.
See, now you know why the rest of us don't like the fucking wogs.
Yep, you already turned me on them. That's it. Had it with the Italians.
See,
Pizza
we're not racist.
Gotta go.
We're not
it's a
racist.
sacrifice.
We're not racist in Australia here. We're just correct.
All right, you end up with Pritsin, all right, taken by Bulgarian forces. Italy announces its adherence to the Pact of London. This is actually kind of important because, once again, Italy, all right, is looking upon this as a chance to carve up, all right, the Austro-Hungarian Empire through here. Okay, by them adhering to this pact, they're saying that Serbia will remain intact. All right, now Serbia is being destroyed because the Bulgarians are winning these battles.
Let's talk about that. How bad is Serbia doing? When you say being destroyed, militarily,
yes,
or
militarily
on a civilian level destroyed?
When the Bulgarians joined the battle, any chance that the Serbians had went right out the window. The first thing that you see, which was earlier this month, in just a month, all right, the Bulgarian forces have taken this area, and the next month they take this area and this area and this area. All right,
you know, that's really weird. Like, you don't think, oh, who's a good military? Bulgaria. What?
Okay, and of course, what's happening here is the Austro-Hungarians are seizing all the areas further north and pushing us. At this point in time now, you're seeing these guys are fleeing into Albania.
Is it total war in Serbia? And by total war, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
total war.
The populations are I wouldn't say they're being massacred. All right, but they are being controlled. They are under the auspices of the Austro-Hungarians and the Bulgarians. And yes, they are being repressed what you would consider being oppressed. Is that what you're asking?
When I say total war, I'm thinking Atlanta.
No, I mean, the areas that are fought, they fight over them, they get shelled, and they move on. It's just like everything else.
Okay, so they're not going out of their way, though, to rape and pillage and burn the cities to the ground.
They're not going out of the way. Is that happening in places? Yeah, it's happening in places.
You know, you almost have to feel bad for Serbia. They're the reason this whole war kind of broke out, but they're also the ones that lost everything in this war. How many of their young men died? How many of their women were raped and killed? How many died from starvation? I don't think the numbers are out there, and I don't think they ever will be.
Well, it'd be impossible to know. I mean, you're talking small towns in remote areas. It would be impossible for them to find out.
But if you have a look at what the Serbs did during the 90s, you sort of kind of go, so that's what World War I was over. Okay.
Yeah, there's unfortunately too much truth to that.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you guys. I'll go ahead and continue, because I know we don't usually do a long episode on Sundays, and we're headed towards the 2-hour mark in half an hour, so go ahead.
Well, do you want to stop here then and just stop?
Oh, I'm good. If you're good, it's up to you. If you're golden, dude, keep going.
Okay. Pritzen. Okay, which you already mentioned. The adherence to the Pact of London. Like I said, this was important because you got to remember, London said Serbia will be Serbia when we win the war. Okay, so what basically Italy is doing is they're renouncing any of their claims to Serbian territory by agreeing to this.
Interesting. I am going to step away real quick. The babies are in the back and they're being way too quiet. If you guys get to the 4th of December, please stop. I want to talk about that. Finally, the United States is mentioned. So don't pass that up without me, all right? I'll be right back.
The Serbs take Monastir. All right, it was taken by Bulgarian forces, and you see the French you remember earlier they said that they were talking about how they could support Serbia. Okay, they basically they threw a few French troops in there, but for all intents and purposes, they can't stem the tide because they can't supply. They can't really supply and consistently keep the Serbians alive. Right, so they retreat. All right.
And there's no point supporting an indigenous force that has worse supply issues than you.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. The British forces, like I said, we've talked about it before, retreat from Pistopon. All right, and they've reached Kut, where they'll set up their defensive operations, and the siege basically begins. General Joffre, all right, the chief of French General Staff from July 28th. 1911, appointed commander-in-chief of the French armies and appointed chief of the general staff. Lapses, right? They basically are kicking him out. All right, but not before. They're basically saying that they're not going to, give him any more power by doing this. But they're not getting rid of him quite yet. He's going to go into for one more mass slaughter of his own people prior to this.
Right. You'll probably find too that there's quite a lot of people that are under him that they needed to get rid of at the same time.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of truth to that. But he's going to go for the last big hurrah. All right, because the next battle of Verdun is his pièce de résistance, and
so Japan is in this war, right?
Yeah.
Is the Asian theater just non-existent at this point? Because I haven't seen it on the timeline at all.
Because
pretty much is
everything that they've needed. There is no more. What forces are left that Germany has that are in the Pacific? None. For all intents and purposes, they've lost. Japan has made all these gains in these areas. They have no, they reign supreme. So
Okay.
what do you want the Japanese to do? Sail ships on over and start landing on French soil?
No, I was just curious, man. I mean, honestly, I know they're in the war, and they get mad at the end because they get nothing, but I kind of see why they got nothing. You did nothing. Why should we reward you
Well,
for sitting there?
You got to remember they took over a lot of those colonies, colonial islands, all right, away from the Germans.
And the Germans also at that point in time were really trying not to start anything in the colonies because they basically had too much on their plate as it was. They simply couldn't support any conflicts in the colonies. There was actually a couple of stories during World War One where there's one part of Africa, I can't remember exactly where, but there's basically is a lake that separates these two African countries. And there's the Brits on one side, there's the Germans on the other. They've even got like an actual warship in this fucking lake. And all they do is they just sort of sail it around a couple of times during the war, and that's about it. And not a shot was fired at each other because neither of them wanted to start shit because the Poms knew that they couldn't get supplied if the Germans wanted to kick off. Germans knew that they couldn't get supplies if the Poms wanted to kick off. Neither of them could kick off if they wanted to, so they just sat there and did nothing.
Well, no, and because this is what it kind of leads up to World War II with the Japanese, right? Is their animosity to the deal, the Treaty of Versailles, right?
Yeah. Yes,
there's way more to it than that.
Yeah, that's a very small piece of the Japanese mindset. You got to remember, Japan has an imperial mindset similar to Germany's, to be honest.
With what Japan had to suck about at the beginning of World War II, you sort of look at the Versailles Treaty aspect of it and go, really? You want to include that? Oh, well, all right then.
Yeah, well,
the punitive action against Germany, when we get to the actual, I think we'll do a whole show on just the Treaty of Versailles, because what they did to Germany created Hitler, created Nazis, created World War II. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it. That's what happened.
To a large extent, there was a lot of that. That is true. Okay. Serbian government and military headquarters are basically going to Albania. All right. And then now you have the United States. Go ahead, Mad Dog. You wanted to read it.
United States government requests recall of German attache. Yeah, right. Go ahead and finish it. It's actually blurry on my end because I'm watching it on your screen.
Okay.
So pretty much what the United States is doing is they are saying we will no longer have diplomatic ties with Germany whatsoever. That is half a step closer to war, is it not?
It's an announcement that we are not amused with your actions. That's what it is.
I don't think so. Once you pull your diplomatic relations, you are on the doorstep of war. We still had a direct line to Gorbachev during the fucking Cold War. A direct line with Russia.
That's something that gets established much later, though, because the United States wants to establish that. We didn't have a direct line to Stalin, for example.
Well, Stalin was a cunt.
You didn't have a direct line to Germany because Hitler didn't have things that he could fling at you and wipe out cities with.
Harvester of Sorrow says, another hour, bro. So it sounds like the crowd wants us to keep going. So yeah, we're gonna go through December. We're gonna wrap up 1915 finally in 2019.
Hi, son.
The French finished their retreat from Serbia. All right. The siege of Kut begins. Duranzo is bombarded by an Austrian squadron. All right.
No, the siege of Kut. Where is that? Do you have a map for that? What's the siege look like?
Siege of Kut is over here.
I always like talking about sieges and storming a city. Let's talk about
The
this.
siege of Kut is because of the campaign. I don't know if this map shows Kut where it was at.
Oh, are the British forces sieging a city in the middle of the fucking desert?
The British forces
being
are
sieged.
under siege.
They're being sieged.
Oh, okay. MGTOW Warrior, what is up? We're talking a little bit about World War I tonight. That's what we do on Sundays. So the British are being besieged. They have a water supply then, luckily, right?
Oh, they got the rivers. Yeah, they got the Irish River. But yeah, they got water. But Townsend, when the siege begins, sends off a letter, all right, or a message saying, you have to save us. You have to save us. We have no supplies. We can't hold out. You've got to save us now.
And he had 6 months supplies.
Yes. And the result is, and we'll be reading about it, several different attempts in an attempt to try and save them. All right, because they become frantic. The British forces become frantic in their attempt to try and save Townsend and save his forces.
Is it a full siege? Are they encircled? In other words, they cannot get reinforcements.
Full siege. They are encircled.
Do they surrender? What ends up happening? Because, like I said, I don't know World War I like you two do.
Yes,
you take the lead on this.
Yes, the British are forced to surrender. It is a major blow to the British pride in the empire.
We've actually mentioned this one a little bit earlier, and I did go on a bit of a tirade about, if you have a look at the amount of people who were surrendering, in World War I and World War II, it's like tens of thousands of people and stuff, and you sit there thinking, couldn't you just at least got everyone to fire one round at least?
Well, that's something I never got, because when you surrender, you pretty much are telling the enemy, hey, take me to a POW camp and torture me. Why not just fight to the last? Why? Why surrender?
There are a couple of aspects you do have to sort of look into. I mean, like, say with the Japanese during World War II, I mean, it was supposed to be a war that was, governed by the Geneva Convention and all this kind of stuff. War crimes weren't supposed to happen and all this kind of stuff. And I'll bet you $10, if you ask all the POWs in Burma if they wanted to fight on, if they could go back and have the choice again, I bet you $10 they wouldn't be fucking going through the POW camp.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I know I'm not a military guy. Like, I really wasn't meaning that as a jackass fucking...
This is one of the soldiers that surrendered at Kut.
See, that's why you don't surrender. Like, holy fuck, dude.
No,
this
is what he looked like when he surrendered.
Oh, when he did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But you
That's
see, like,
worse than Vicksburg, dude.
Yeah, you see, like, people didn't know this and they didn't realise this, and all the stories about warfare and all that come beforehand were all your glories and fucking, big valor battles and stuff like that. They never mention any of this shit. And that's not supposed to happen in the first place. So when you do surrender 50,000 of your troops, you're expecting them to be treated, well, humanely for a start. You're not expecting them to be all massacred and, put through starvation and torture and all this kind of shit. So it is, in hindsight now to say, don't fucking surrender because, well, we know what could happen. But back in those days, they had no idea.
No, that picture was actually quite horrifying. How long were they sieged for?
They get sieged all the way through April, if I'm not mistaken.
Damn. That's no way to live, man. Like, and you're being shelled the whole fucking time? Fuck that.
You're in strong defensive position. If Townsend screws the pooch with this, right? Because of his actions and his false statements to the authorities. Because the authorities initially were looking at it going, okay, he's got plenty of supplies. He's in a great defensive position. We can take our time to come save him, and we can think of a better plan where we can consolidate our forces and then make a push. Instead, because of him saying no, I have no rations, I have no supplies, I'm in danger of being overrun at any minute. Come here quickly. The British basically throw unprepared forces at the Ottoman Turks, and the Ottoman Turks are able to beat them back in detail.
So, get that you want to protect your core, right? Because he's a core commander.
No. The problem is that he was doing it for his own glory, because he was being stymied. This whole Mesopotamian campaign is his idea to go take Baghdad, and he'd be considered the conqueror of Baghdad.
Did he have a corps? Or did he have a whole division?
No, he had an entire freaking division under his command. He had pretty much an army under his command.
Oh my God, that is like Vicksburg, right?
Around 30 or 40,000 troops, if I'm not mistaken.
Vicksburg was about the same. Yeah, that is the type of blow Vicksburg was. That was huge. For a different reason in the Civil War, but just manpower-wise, that's a whole division wiped out, dude. Gone.
Yep.
Off the chessboard.
And then on top of that too, all the rescue attempts that got beaten back. So now you've got more men killed and wounded, basically taken out of the action. So not only have you wasted your own blokes and then just fucking handed them to the enemy, but you've also depleted what any other forces are out there by getting them to bash their heads against the brick wall. He was a clusterfuck.
That's incompetence. Tell me he got, when they paroled him, because that's what they did back then still, right? Tell me he got stripped of rank and sent home.
Oh, eventually when he comes back home, he never has another command again, but at the same time, they don't, in the United States, they would have court-martialed him. He doesn't go through any kind of real disciplinary, formal disciplinary procedures.
Because the gentleman's code, that is the British military, right?
Oh, fog of war, hindsight's 2020, blah blah, woof.
Yeah, Townsend is really a pompous, arrogant buffoon. All right, who wasted his men. So,
the worst type of general, the worst.
So let's continue here. All right. Durazzo is bombarded by the Austrian squadron, which I already said. Ipik, Montenegro, is taken by the Austro-Hungarian forces. These are the more of the Serb territory for all intents and purposes. The British government tells Greece, "Hey, look, don't trade with."
Pick a fucking side.
All right. The siege of Kut, which we've already mentioned, the actions of Kostromau. Basically, the British are their support for the Serbs is now waning. All right, let's get back to where we were before, which is right up here. All right, Montenegro. All right. Basically, they're being pushed all the way through here. This is the final retreat of Serbia into Albania. Right.
And then they pretty much become a government and a military in exile, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for all intents and purposes, yes. All right.
Although there are still some resistance cells within Serbia all throughout the war. Let's not leave that unsaid.
No, not really. Not really. This is not World War II.
Oh, I am thinking of World War II, aren't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my bad.
Tito's
okay.
partisans.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sorry.
They're different. Yeah, the partisan fights that go on are quite a bit different, right? And then you have the agreement concluded between the French government and the Netherlands of the Oversea Trust, which is basically just another telling the Dutch that they need to adhere to the Allies. And then you finally get something that's positive for the Aussies. Positive in a certain sense.
Mm.
And that's something that should be said. This week, it's all negative for the Allies, isn't it? The Western powers are getting their asses handed to them right now.
Well,
this is nothing new.
at this point, yes, but they begin the evacuation of the Dardanelles. All right, you're beginning to see this now. Serbia is continuing to losing ground. Joffre is they appoint another general to help Joffre. Right, Joffre is the French commander in chief, and what we haven't seen is the British are getting ready to replace. Aren't they getting ready to replace their leader as well for their expeditionary force?
I think so.
All right, they haven't done it yet, but it's going to happen soon. General Cyril demands the withdrawal of Greek troops from Sri Lanka. I think that
that did actually happen. That was at Camp with Birdwood. Charles Monroe.
Mm-hmm. Mm. All right. The Battle of Isano ends. The fourth battle. Another one will begin soon. Don't worry. All right. The German government agrees to the request and recalls von Papen and Boyed.
Okay, why did they agree to the request of the United States? Because they had to? Or because, okay, if it's fuck me, it's fuck you too, and now we're riding Mexico?
They're basically adhering to things for all intents and purposes.
Is this when the idea came to write Mexico, though? Or did the British make that up? We need to talk about that when it comes up.
We'll talk about the Zimmerman letter when it happens. We're a little. Don't you think we're a little ways away from the Zimmerman letter? I mean, that is one of the things that does bring America into the war, but it's still a ways off yet, dude.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, the British. I think the British were up to something.
Yes, we'll write in that letter that everybody thinks that that the Germans are telling everybody that the Americans are fucking the Mexicans. That'll piss them off.
No, the British wanted, or not the British, but supposedly the Germans wanted the Mexicans to attack the United States if we entered the war. That way we would divert our troops. Instead of going to the European theater, we would fight in the Western Hemisphere. Hey, if it's real, that's a good plan, Germany.
No, that just means that Germany would be crushed after Mexico.
Right? Because Mexico can't stand a chance in 1915 against the United States. Are you kidding me?
No, of course they couldn't, but it would have delayed any operation across the ocean into France.
I wonder how California would like to own Mexico City.
Nowadays, who knows? Okay. The Dorian, Gavini, the South Serbians are taken by Bulgarian forces. They're still doing it. The Greek government refuses to withdraw the troops from Sri Lanka. All right. Yuan Shikai, all right, accepts the throne of China. Okay, this is basically the movement in the east on China. But you got to remember at this point in time, for all intents and purposes, these people are going there at the behest of Japan. The affair of Wadi Seneb, all right, which begins the here.
She was a real big slut. She was.
This is basically a battle. All right, part of the battles for the that's in Egypt. Right, some of the skirmishes that's going on. For all intents and purposes, though, these are small little affairs. They're not amounting to much aside from they're solidifying the control of the British of Egypt. British control of Egypt is being solidified. The British government orders a partial relaxation of economic pressure on Greece. Because Greece wasn't playing ball, all right, they were kind of being considered, everyone was hating them. Remember, I was telling you about the guy who took the place of the Greek prime minister, all right, who got tossed out by the king, right? this starts to bear fruit. He's more of a diplomat. He's trying to walk this middle of the road, and he's winning things diplomatically rather than with armed forces.
This is also partially a slight incentive from the British government because, well, the sanctions and shit hadn't been working, and it's what if we release it a little? Would you play nice then? Sure, we'll play nice for a little bit.
Right. Hamden is occupied by the Russian forces. What you're talking about is back over here. If I'm not mistaken, Hamden is. I don't think it's over here. I'm pretty sure it's up in this area. In this area here, because this is where they've been making their push. All right. Here it is. Here's Hamden right here. All right. So you can see that they're trying to push. Of course, the Russians are always doing this. Ooh, warm water port. We need to get down here. Okay, that's their goal. Okay, let's be honest. That's their goal. All right, but you can see that they're carving up this territory away from the Ottoman Turks. That's what, for all intents and purposes, the Allies are winning against the Turkish forces for the most part. Although they've had to now retreat from the Dardanelles. The Bulgarian and Greek general staffs conclude an agreement establishing a temporary neutral zone on the Greek frontier. This once again is, like I said, the Greek prime minister walking that middle of the road to try and more or less stay out of the war. And for all intents and purposes, he does a good job under difficult circumstances. The last Allied forces in Macedonia withdraw into Greek territory. All right. Qasr Sarim in western Persia is reoccupied by Turkish forces. And French Field Marshal Sir John French resigns as Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces in France. This is a major changeover, is it not?
Yeah.
All right. So, and who replaces him?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
I'm sure we'll read about who replaces him. That's right, Douglas Haig.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Just for bloody explanation's sake, a field marshal is effectively the Commonwealth version of like a 5-star general. It's the dude that's boots on the ground, that's in control of everything from the catering all the way to the special forces.
Yeah, this is a picture of Haig here. Let me pull this up for everybody so they can take a good look at this individual. He's not a bad commander, but he still suffers from the rest of the problems that take place during this time frame on the western front.
Am I the only one though that, like, say what you want about the Germans or whatever, right? But the fucking Iron Cross thing looks cool.
You're talking about the Victoria Cross, this right here?
No, I'm talking about the one the fucking Hitler's grandfather had on him.
Oh.
So the Iron Cross, to me, always sort of meant old-fashioned. Like, you know, if something was supposed to be old-fashioned, it'd have an Iron Cross on it. So that's just all that means to me.
I just like the look of it, that's all.
By the way,
kind of like the Japanese planes with the fucking dot on it. Yeah, I know it looks like shoot here, but still, it was pretty cool looking, right?
Anyway, one of the things you had asked about before, and I should have brought this picture up at this time. This is the river that's going through there. You can see where the British forces are. Okay. They have plenty of water.
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought you had a map. That's why I asked, but I wasn't going to push it.
I'm sorry about that. I should have brought that map up earlier. All right, so Haig has taken over. The Bulgarian and Greek general staffs, we already read that, I think.
German light cruiser Bremen.
Wait a minute. I know I'm jumping forward, But on Christmas, the Turks fucking attack?
Okay. Does this surprise you? On Christmas
Fucking
Eve, that they
assholes.
attack and cut?
They don't have Christmas.
I think one of the things is the naval operations on Lake Tanganyika begins. This is in Africa where they're trying to go against the that German warship that Farty was talking about earlier.
Mm.
They're not, for all intents and purposes, there's nothing really. I mean, it's something for the people that are there, but to be honest, the forces involved are minuscule in comparison.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no fucking difference to the rest of the whole war at all.
Right.
Except for adding one more sheet of paper to the pile of reports. That's it.
And then what you see is you see the obviously the Christmas Eve attack it clicked. Now the whole purpose of this, of course, was to probe the defensives, see how strong they are, see if you can overrun them. You got to remember, the Turks are now being led by the German von der Gotz, right? Von der Gotz is probing. He's using probing attacks to find out if they're weak, all right? And it's an attempt to overrun the British forces. You also got to remember, communications is being done by radio, right? One of the problems with radio transmissions is your enemy can pick them up too. Von der Gotz was under the impression that, just like everybody else, that Townsend was close to out of ammunition and couldn't sustain an attack. So he launches a preemptive attack, thinking, okay, well, if they're in that such dire straits, maybe we can overrun them quickly. It fails, okay, because the British forces really are not. They're not suffering for supplies. They're not at that point yet. Then you have the affair of the Wadi Maji in the western Egypt. Basically, the British are consolidating their control of Egypt. Russian forces continue their advance in Persia. And Prince Firmin Firma, appointed Prime Minister of Persia. Basically, these are people that are trying to. They're just playing checkers with people at this point. Who's gonna be on my side? I now appoint you this. Is it meaningful? For all intents and purposes, no.
And we just sort of skipped over something that was a bit like that too. It was actually on the 23rd, and this sort of bounces back to the shipping licenses and the talks with the Dutch. Trading with the enemy, Extension of Powers Act 1915. Beginning of a blacklist policy comes into force in Great Britain. So where I was saying with the Dutch, it's sort of like, you may as well fucking deal with us because you can't deal with anybody else. That was where that was starting to come in, and that was sort of the same thing there. It's not just with people, like, you're an affluent person, who are you going to side with? It's more like, well, your companies and your industries and stuff like that are now siding with us, so you've got to kind of side with us. If you're not with us, you're with them, and we can punish you by not trading with your companies and all this kind of stuff, so your country will go into bankruptcy and shit like that, so you may as well side with us. It's the better way.
Okay. On the 26th, you have the German raider Moe sails from Bremen on its first cruise. The naval action of Lake Tanganyika, where the German gunboat King Kigani was captured by the HMS Mini and Toto, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which basically, okay, we captured you. You have captured us. Okay. And a treaty is concluded between the British government and Ibn Saud Emir Najib. The name ring a bell?
No.
Ibn Saud
Emir of Najib.
Where do you think Najib is?
It's some fucking joint in the back of bloody Palestine or something like that.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the beginning of Saudi Arabia, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know where you were going with that. So
Yeah, let me confirm where this is at. Yep. Okay. What you're seeing is basically this is here, right here. This is the beginning of Saudi Arabia. Saud, the family of Saud.
So Saudi Arabia is a really fresh country still, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, exactly. All right, but this is a treaty between him, and he basically wants to help use these forces to begin the campaign. This is where you're going to see the British begin to, bring in, Sir Lawrence of Arabia and so forth beginning this. On the 28th, you have the final evacuation of Gallipoli. All right.
Right now, what we've been doing for the last 20 odd days or so is that when people like the supplies and stuff have been coming in, we've been bringing empty boxes in and then sending stuff in full boxes out. So the amount of supplies on the beach didn't change. It looked like everything was just business as usual. And the amount of troops were moved around strategically so as it didn't look like that they were slowly decreasing. And like we kept about a battalion or something like that still sitting there. Every now and then they'd pop off a shot at random, so just to make the world look like we were still there. And on the final day, we'd rigged up this little mechanism, a piece of string between two cans, and one of the cans had some water in it, a little hole, and it dripped onto the second can, and that can was attached to the trigger of the rifle. And depending on how much water you put in the top can, depends on when your rifle will go off. So at random, these rifles with these tin cans attached to them would still be going off anywhere up to a couple of days later. And it wasn't until that point that the Turks had figured out we'd all fucked off. we managed to evacuate everybody off the Gallipoli Peninsula without actually having any casualties from the evacuation itself, and the Turks didn't figure it out until we were long gone by 2 days.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Keeps you from getting slaughtered on the beach, which was very important.
Yeah.
All right, you have Durazzo, raided by the Austrian light naval forces. All right, now where is that? That is over here now, near Albania. It's right here. This is Durazzo. It's called Duress now, but this is Durazzo. And so basically, the Austro-Hungarians have now seized control of this entire area, and they're starting to mount naval raids against Albania. This is Albania. And then we have this. Draft rules are approved for the Inter-Allied Council of War. Basically, drafts are beginning now.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about drafting people in there. On the 30th of December, the consuls of the Central Powers in Sri Lanka are arrested and deported by the French General Saril. The HMS Natal is destroyed by an internal explosion in Cromarty Harbor. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Okay, so it must not have been a big event. Apparently, and that's something else. I mean,
see, well, I'm starting to learn a few things even now, and there's a couple of instances where they have kept it quiet. There's one in Nova Scotia. There was another one in England where they have detonations on munition ships and whatnot.
mm-hmm.
And the whole reason why they kept it quiet was because they wanted to, not let anyone know that there was like fifth columnists or spies or anarchists and all this kind of stuff. And that basically was left as a secret. And every time it came up to be declassified, it just kept on getting reclassified, and then they're only starting to come out with this kind of stuff now. There's about 3 that they're actually saying that was saboteurs and stuff like that, but there's about half a dozen or so that they still aren't admitting to being either saboteurs or an accident or something like that. Partially because some of them they don't really know themselves because there's not very much left after one of these events. But also partially because they couldn't investigate it enough to determine whether it was. So they couldn't really go around saying that it was fifth columnists when they didn't really know whether it was a fifth columnist themselves. So
unfortunately, I think I'm reading on this about Natal. This is a bad explosion apparently because you lost 390 crewmen and civilians.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
well,
this wasn't. I figured it was just it got blown up a little bit and sank in the harbor with maybe a loss of 15 or 20 people, but 390 is a significant number of people.
Yeah, no. Like I said, when these events happen, they're really big events. Like the one in Nova Scotia, I think, was breaking windows 20 miles away. They've flattened shit out to fucking 5 or 6 miles.
I mean, this is the ship here. You can see that this is also. I wouldn't say it's pre dreadnought, but it's pretty close. It's right during that phase because you can see the turrets here.
Well, that could have just that could also just have been a magazine detonation too, because they had a spate of those as well. Like import, fucking ship would just blow up for no fucking reason. Someone pulled the wrong tit in the magazine, basically threw their cigarette out in the wrong spot.
It was likely just like the Maine, the USS Maine. All right. They think it was an internal explosion. They're pretty sure it was an internal explosion. Of course, nobody knew what had happened, and they blamed we blamed Spain for it.
Well, like I said, there's not very much left after an event like that. Like we're talking hundreds of tons of explosives here.
Yeah, when there's an explosion like that, it's really hard to know what exactly happened with some of that stuff. All right, and then. On the final thing of the December, you have the last elements of the Indian Expeditionary Force G leave the Dardanelles to amalgamate into the Indian Expedition Force E in Egypt. They are placed under Egypt. So that is the end of 1915.
Man, just talking about it these weeks, it's been a long slog. Think about fighting it.
I was trying to warn you right from the beginning.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your mind around just how devastating, how much what this war was actually like, because we have nothing like it anymore.
And just also keep this in mind, it does only get worse from here.
Yes, unfortunately, you're correct, because you got two major battles coming in 1916 that have major ramification on the Western Front, and that's the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of the Somme.
But as we go into next week, we will dive into 1916. We're getting closer to when I actually get interested about the war. Right around the time the United States joins. Go figure. Sorry, all the foreigners out there, but yeah, kind of America-centric here on this channel.
He's an America-phile.
America! Fuck yeah! Coming again to say the motherfucking day, yeah!
Damn right. You said it, not me. Alright,
so you can lick my butt and suck on my balls!
Okay, the one thing that stands out is the retreat from the Dardanelles. Should they have stayed, or did they make the right move?
No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't have stayed. They did make the right move. However, the theory at the time was the longer we're in the Dardanelles, the more the Turks are focusing on there.
It remained a major threat while they were there, but the reality is that it was doing several things that were hampering actually the British more than it was the Turks or the Central Powers. For one thing, it was tying down the British fleet into an area that it didn't need. All right, that it didn't need to work with, and it was allowing the Austria-Hungarian Navy to actually sail around and do damage.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so just that fact of pulling them off to release the British Navy to do what the British Navy needed to do was a major benefit.
Churchill's biggest folly.
Yes.
I would agree. MC, what do you think?
As it was executed, yes. Could it have worked? Possibly, if people would have approved the original plan and it had gone forward in secrecy.
Or if the Navy could have fucking landed in the right spot.
Well,
that would have helped.
that definitely would have helped as well.
Well, no, and why couldn't the Navy, I still don't get why they couldn't sit offshore with gunboats and give the Expeditionary Force room to breathe.
They did. That's the only reason they were allowed to stay there.
Yeah.
They couldn't come further inland and maybe spread the line a little bit, or maybe instead of trying to run through that strait, run up the other side of the peninsula and shell some cities.
All right, guys, we need to form a battalion chain. We're going to haul this dreadnought up over the hill.
Well, isn't it a peninsula that they're sitting at, right? You've shown that map a million times. It's a peninsula.
Yeah,
they can run up the...
You couldn't get around... You couldn't get around the other side of the peninsula because of mines and shore batteries and stuff like that.
Yeah, what I'm saying is extending the left flank with your gunboats.
But you
to where you're taking the coastline all on the left side of the peninsula and you're forcing them to kind of fight where you want them to.
You couldn't take the right side of the peninsula. That's why. That was the whole purpose. Is if they could have cut the peninsula in half, then they could have won. The reality is that there's a number of things that could have worked if it was done correctly. It was not done correctly for a variety of reasons. British arrogance being one of them. All right, and the other thing was an underestimation of just how tenacious the Turks were going to be, and the Turks at this point in this area had a Turkish leader, Mustafa Ataturk, all right, who knew what the hell he was doing. And once he was able to take full charge of this, there was no chance. If the British would have hit there with the surprise, with the way it was initially intended, it had a chance to work. At which point they could have been doing a march on to Constantinople. And if they could have taken Constantinople and so forth, at that point, they could have been basically feeding supplies directly in and out to Russia. All right. The idea behind it wasn't necessarily a bad idea. Execution, though, and planning was simply horrible. There really was. They really didn't do a very good job of planning the whole Dardanelle campaign.
Overall thoughts of the year 1915 as we have just ended it, and we're going to move into the next phase of the war next week. Overall thoughts, guys. Other than Slaughterhouse, because that's what pops in my head. I'm playing that one.
More than anything else, is escalation, especially on the Western Front, where they're beginning to use on a continuous basis poison gas.
How was 1915? Well, it had the potential to be $300, but all we ended up with was 2 sluts and a poof.
On that note, everybody, thank you very much. We are still trying to get back in the groove, and we're working on putting together that Vampire the Masquerade show for you guys. So hopefully the streams will get back to normal. My apologies. But at least we're keeping the Sunday schedule every week, pretty much. So we got that. Thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Good night, good luck. And if it's 1915 or 16, don't go to fucking France. Peace.